So there we were, minding our own business on good old Earth, when the universe decided to knock on our door. And by knock, I mean broadcast a message that made every world leader simultaneously choke on their morning coffee. Greetings, peaceful inhabitants of Earth. The holographic transmission began, featuring what looked like a butterfly that had been hitting the gym way too hard. We are the Galactic Diplomatic Council, and after careful study of your cultural transmissions, we formally invite your species to join our interstellar community of harmony and cooperation. Now, you'd think this would be cause for celebration. First contact. Galactic community, peace and harmony. But here's the thing about Earth's leadership: they've watched way too many alien invasion movies. Their first thought wasn't hooray, space friends, it was this is obviously a trap. Director Harrison of the Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs, yeah. We apparently had one of those gathering dust in some basement called an emergency meeting. Gentlemen. He announced to a room full of suits who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else, we need our best diplomats for this mission. That's when someone made the fatal mistake of asking, what if it's not actually diplomacy they want? Harrison's eyes lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. Then we send diplomats who can handle themselves if things go sideways, which is how Earth's first diplomatic mission to the stars ended up being staffed by what was essentially a black ops team with crash courses in saying please and thank you. Meet Jake Morrison, team leader, and the kind of guy who thought putting on a tuxedo made him James Bond. Jake had spent the last decade doing things for the government that definitely weren't in any official paperwork, and now he was supposed to smile and shake hands instead of infiltrate and eliminate. The man had read exactly one book on diplomacy, which he'd skimmed while on a plane. Riley Park, our tech specialist, was a hacker so good she could probably break into alien computer systems before they even invented computers. She had the social skills of a particularly antisocial hermit crab, but could crack any system known to humanity. Her idea of small talk was explaining different ways to bypass firewalls. Marcus Webb, designated cultural attaché, was a former Marine who figured culture was just another battlefield that required different tactics. He'd read Emily Post's etiquette guide cover to cover and somehow interpreted it as a field manual for social warfare. Marcus approached dinner parties like military operations, complete with entry and exit strategies. And then there was Diana Cross, our linguistic expert. Diana spoke 47 languages fluently and knew 200 ways to kill someone without making a sound. She was the kind of person who could translate ancient dead languages while simultaneously planning 3 different escape routes. Her LinkedIn profile listed international relations as her specialty, which wasn't technically lying if you counted the international incidents she'd helped resolve. The briefing was supposed to be about cultural sensitivity and trade negotiations. Instead, it turned into a tactical planning session. Remember, Harrison emphasized, these aliens think we're a peaceful species based on our television shows. They've been intercepting our broadcasts for decades, and apparently they're big fans of our sitcoms and romantic comedies. Jake nodded seriously. So they expect us to be weak and naive, perfect cover for intelligence gathering. No, Jake, they expect us to be friendly and, right, infiltration through false friendship, the classic. Prusik. Riley was already pulling up schematics on her tablet. I'll need to establish secure communications and identify their technological vulnerabilities within the first hour. Marcus raised his hand. What's the dress code for this operation? Because I've studied formal dining protocols, and proper fork placement could be crucial for maintaining our cover. Diana was quietly reviewing her phrase books. I should probably learn some basic interrogation techniques in their languages, just in case negotiations break down. Harrison watched his diplomatic team plan what sounded suspiciously like a military operation and wondered if he should have just sent actual diplomats. But then again, what could possibly go wrong? Famous last words. As it turned out, the Galactic Council station was not what our crack team of diplomats expected. Instead of a sterile military installation primed for ambush, they found themselves docking at what looked like a 5-star space resort designed by someone with excellent taste and absolutely zero understanding of defensive architecture. This is obviously a psychological warfare tactic, Jake muttered into his calm as they disembarked. Make us comfortable, lower our guard, then strike when we least expect it. The welcoming committee was led by Ambassador Cleth, who looked like someone had crossed a butterfly with a rainbow and given it way too much enthusiasm for life. Cleth literally bounced as they approached, their iridescent wings fluttering with excitement. "Oh, wonderful, wonderful." Cleth chirped in perfect English. "The humans have arrived. We've been so looking forward to meeting the species that created friends in the office. Tell me, is it true that your people solve all conflicts through witty banter and romantic misunderstandings?" Jake's hand instinctively moved toward where his concealed weapon definitely wasn't, because this was supposed to be a diplomatic mission. That's one way to put it. Behind Cleth stood Chancellor Vorp, a large slug-like being whose skin had the texture of well-worn leather and whose eyes held the weary patience of someone who'd been in bureaucracy far too long. "Welcome to the council station," Vorp said with the enthusiasm of someone reading from a script for the 1,000th time. "Please proceed through standard greeting protocols." That's when things started going sideways. The standard greeting protocols involved each alien delegation member approaching the humans with what their species considered friendly gestures. The first delegate, a tall crystalline being, reached toward Diana with appendages that sparkled in the light. Diana immediately interpreted this as an attack, smoothly sidestepped, and had the crystal alien in a diplomatic chokehold before anyone could blink. "A hostile contact," she announced calmly, engaging defensive measures. "No, no." Cleth fluttered frantically. "That's just Counselor Prism." They were trying to share their welcoming light frequency. The next alien, a furry creature that looked like someone had given a teddy bear too much coffee, bounded toward Marcus with arms spread wide. Marcus, applying his newly acquired knowledge of social warfare, immediately recognized this as a flanking maneuver and responded with what he considered appropriate defensive dining etiquette, which apparently involved redirecting the aliens' momentum and pinning them against the nearest wall. "Perimeter secured," Marcus reported, a possible attempt at unauthorized physical contact neutralized. Riley, meanwhile, had spotted the station's security sensors and was already working on her tablet. "I'm detecting multiple surveillance systems, but we're initiating defensive countermeasures." Within 30 seconds, every security camera in the docking bay had mysteriously malfunctioned. Security Chief Zara, a militant-looking being with too many eyes and an expression that suggested she'd seen everything the universe had to offer and wasn't impressed by any of it, stepped forward. "Attention Earth representatives, please desist from." Jake smoothly interrupted, flashing his most diplomatic smile. "Apologies for the confusion. Earth customs require us to assess potential security risks before engaging in formal negotiations." He gestured grandly at his team, who were still holding various confused aliens in positions that were definitely not part of standard diplomatic protocol. "This is fascinating," Cleth exclaimed, apparently immune to the chaos unfolding around them. "Is this how humans demonstrate friendship? Through tactical superiority?" Diana released Counselor Prism, who stood there looking confused but somehow impressed. "A cultural exchange through defensive positioning," she explained helpfully. "It's a traditional Earth greeting that shows respect through mutual vulnerability assessment." Marcus nodded seriously as he released the furry alien. "Exactly. We call it aggressive courtesy. It demonstrates that we trust you enough to show you our combat capabilities." Vorp's eye stalks swiveled between the humans and the other aliens, who were all looking at each other with expressions of bewildered fascination. "So," Vorp said slowly, "when humans say nice to meet you, they first establish tactical dominance to prove the meeting is indeed nice?" "Precisely," Jake confirmed, because at this point rolling with it seemed like the best option. Earth diplomacy is all about honest communication through strength. Security Chief Zara looked like she wanted to object, but then she noticed that several council members were taking notes. "Remarkable," murmured Counselor Prism, their crystalline forms still glowing from excitement. "Such efficiency in establishing trust through mutual respect for combat capabilities." Cleth was practically vibrating with enthusiasm. This explains so much about human entertainment. Your romantic comedies always involve conflict resolution through direct confrontation. Riley finally looked up from her tablet, having successfully defended their position by disabling half the station's monitoring systems. "Are we winning?" she asked quietly. Jake straightened his tie and smiled his most diplomatic smile. "Ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed beings of various classifications, I believe this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship." He had no idea how right he was, or how wrong everything was about to go. The main conference room of the Galactic Council station was designed to impress soaring ceilings, holographic displays showing peaceful scenes from 1,000 worlds, and a circular table that somehow managed to accommodate beings with everything from tentacles to crystalline appendages. It was the kind of room where civilized species came to discuss trade routes and cultural exchanges. Naturally, Earth's diplomatic team saw it as a perfect ambush location. "Too many sightlines," Marcus muttered under his breath as they took their seats. "No clear exit strategy. They've definitely planned this." Jake nodded grimly, adjusting his tie like it was tactical gear. "Stay sharp, people. This is where they make their real move." Chancellor Vorp activated a holographic display showing Earth's television broadcasts. "After extensive study of your cultural transmissions, the Council is prepared to offer a simple trade agreement. We provide access to galactic communication networks and advanced peaceful technologies, and in exchange, Earth grants us distribution rights to produce more of your remarkable entertainment content." Riley's fingers were already dancing across her tablet. "This is obviously a cover story. I'm detecting elevated network activity. They're probably scanning us for weaknesses while they talk." Diana leaned forward with predatory interest. "What specific aspects of our entertainment are you most interested in? What strategic value do they hold for your people?" Cleth's wings practically sparkled with excitement. Oh, the psychological complexity. Your species has mastered the art of resolving conflict through emotional vulnerability and comedic timing. Take the offices. The way your people navigate workplace hierarchies through passive aggression and elaborate pranks shows such sophisticated social warfare. Jake's eyes narrowed. "So you've been studying our social structures, learning how we interact in high-stress environments?" "Exactly." Ambassador Cleth bounced in their seat. "And your romantic comedies. The way humans use miscommunication and dramatic reveals to build emotional tension is like watching master tacticians at work." Marcus, who had spent the last hour memorizing the seating arrangement of the welcome buffet, raised his hand. "Before we proceed with intelligence, information exchange, shouldn't we establish proper protocols for the refreshment service?" He gestured toward the elaborate spread of alien delicacies that had been set up along one wall. "I've studied the strategic importance of proper dining etiquette in establishing trust relationships." Security Chief Zara looked confused. "It's just food. You eat it." "Nothing is just anything in diplomacy," Marcus replied seriously, approaching the buffet like he was defusing a bomb. "For instance, the placement of these crystalline fruits suggests a test of our willingness to consume potentially psychoactive substances. And these tentacle things clearly a challenge to our adaptability to foreign proteins." He began carefully examining each dish, occasionally nodding with approval. "Excellent tactical presentation. The varied textures and colors force us to make rapid assessment decisions while maintaining social composure." Meanwhile, Riley had successfully infiltrated the station's entertainment database and made a disturbing discovery. "Guys," she whispered urgently, "they've been broadcasting our shows across the entire galaxy. Not just watching them, broadcasting them. There are alien species 3 sectors away who have never seen humans but know every episode of Parks and Recreation by heart." Diana perked up at this intelligence. "Fascinating. They'd been conducting psychological warfare operations using our own cultural exports." "Tell me," she addressed the alien delegation directly, "which human phrases have proven most effective in your communications with other species?" "Oh." Cleth fluttered excitedly. "We've integrated so many. That's what she said has become a standard diplomatic response to awkward statements." "And I'll be there for you" is now the official motto of the Galactic Emergency Response Fleet. Councillor Prism's crystalline form chimed melodically. "Your phrase 'winter is coming' has become our standard warning for any approaching difficulties. It's so much more dramatic than our old emergency alerts." Thorpe looked up from his notes. "And we've established an entire department dedicated to studying human memes as a form of rapid cultural transmission. Apparently your species has mastered the art of encoding complex social commentary into simple images." Jake leaned back in his chair, processing this information through his tactical training. "So you're telling me that human communication methods have already infiltrated galactic society?" "Infiltrated is such a harsh word," Cleth said diplomatically. "We prefer enhanced. Your people have revolutionized interspecies communication efficiency." Riley looked up from her tablet with wide eyes. "They've got a database of every TV show, movie, and internet video we've ever broadcast. They've been analyzing human behavior patterns for decades. And what conclusions have you drawn from this research?" Diana asked, a voice carrying just the right amount of diplomatic menace. Ambassador Cleth's enthusiasm somehow managed to increase. "That humans are the most sophisticated social strategists in the known galaxy. The way you use humor to diffuse tension, romance to build alliances, and casual conversations to extract information, it's masterful." Marcus returned from his reconnaissance of the buffet carrying a plate arranged with military precision. "I've completed my assessment of their hospitality tactics. The variety of options suggests they're testing our adaptability, while the informal serving style indicates they want to observe our decision-making processes under casual conditions." He took a careful bite of something purple and nodded approvingly. "Acceptable. No immediate signs of biochemical warfare." Jake straightened his tie again, a gesture that every alien in the room was now carefully noting. "Well then, shall we discuss the specifics of this cultural exchange program?" What he didn't realize was that the aliens were already planning to record this entire negotiation as a masterclass in advanced diplomatic techniques. The diplomatic incident that would later be known as the Great Flower Arrangement misunderstanding started when Councillor Bloom decided to present the human delegation with a traditional welcoming bouquet. The arrangement was beautiful bioluminescent petals that shifted colors and released harmless spores that created tiny sparkles in the air. To Marcus, it looked like a biological weapon delivery system. "Hostile flora detected," he announced, smoothly intercepting the approaching plant being. In one fluid motion that he'd learned from his etiquette manual's chapter on proper handling of unwanted gifts. He disarmed Councillor Bloom, secured the flower arrangement, and had it safely contained in a nearby waste disposal unit. "Threat neutralized," he reported with satisfaction. "Potential airborne toxin dispersal prevented." The silence that followed was the kind of silence that occurs when an entire room of beings suddenly realizes they're witnessing something historically significant for all the wrong reasons. "That was our ceremonial harmony, Bloom," Chancellor Vorp said slowly. "It only releases spores when the recipient is genuinely happy to receive it." Marcus blinked. "So it was a mood-detecting surveillance device?" "No, it was a flower that sparkles when you're pleased," Cleth explained patiently. "Biological monitoring equipment," Diana translated for her team with professional admiration. "Elegant design." Ambassador Cleth's wings began fluttering with what the humans were starting to recognize as dangerous levels of enthusiasm. "Remarkable. You neutralized a potential threat while maintaining perfect social courtesy. Is this standard Earth diplomatic protocol?" Jake, who was beginning to suspect that being a space diplomat was more complicated than infiltrating terrorist cells, straightened his tie. "Earth representatives are trained to proactively address potential complications in negotiations." "Brilliant," exclaimed Councillor Prism, "preventive problem-solving through decisive action." That's when Security Chief Zara made her second mistake of the day. The first had been assuming humans understood the difference between greeting protocols and combat assessment. The second was suggesting they split up for individual cultural orientation sessions. "Perhaps," Zara said with the weary tone of someone who'd been in security too long, "our guests would benefit from separate briefings tailored to their specific diplomatic specializations?" What followed could generously be described as chaos, or more accurately, as four highly trained operatives conducting independent reconnaissance missions while aliens tried to discuss television shows. Jake found himself assigned to Ambassador Cleth for what was supposed to be a session on interspecies communication. Jake approached this as an opportunity to extract intelligence through seduction, not romantic seduction, but the kind of casual charm offensive that made targets want to share information. "So, Ambassador," Jake said with his most winning smile, settling into what he considered his most devastatingly charismatic pose, "tell me about your people's current interests in human entertainment." Cleth practically glowed with excitement. "Oh, it's fascinating. Your species has such complex emotional dynamics. Take Jim and Pam from The Office. The way they navigate workplace romance through elaborate emotional chess matches. And don't get me started on the psychological warfare in Friends. 6 humans in constant alliance and betrayal. The patterns." Jake nodded knowingly. "So you've identified the strategic elements in our social structures." "Yes, the way Ross uses intellectual superiority as a defense mechanism. How Chandler deflects emotional vulnerability through humor. It's like watching master strategists at work." Meanwhile, Riley was supposed to be learning about galactic communication networks. Instead, she'd hacked into their entertainment distribution system and made a disturbing discovery. They've been broadcasting human shows to over 3,000 species, she reported through her comm. But that's not the weird part. The weird part is that they've been creating alien versions. There's a Zorthan remake of Seinfeld where they argue about proper tentacle etiquette. Diana's cultural orientation session was going even more sideways. She was teaching Counselor Prism Earth languages, but her selection of phrases reflected her professional background. "So when humans say break a leg, they mean good luck," she explained helpfully. "Fascinating. And kill it out there. Also good luck. And you're dead to me?" "That one means strong disagreement." And Counselor Prism chimed melodically. "Human language is remarkably efficient. So many expressions related to violence that actually indicate positive emotions. And these curse words you've taught me, are they weapons or tools?" "Both," Diana replied seriously, "depending on context and deployment strategy." Marcus's session on cultural dining practices had somehow turned into a masterclass in tactical food consumption. "You see," Marcus explained to a group of fascinated alien nutritionists, "the key to defensive dining is maintaining situational awareness while appearing relaxed. Always sit facing the exit, identify all potential projectile foods, and never trust anything that's still moving." "But what about social bonding through shared meals?" asked a confused herbivorous alien. "That's advanced psychological warfare," Marcus replied confidently. "Breaking bread together creates artificial intimacy that can be exploited for information gathering." By the end of the day, word had spread throughout the station that the humans had revolutionary approaches to every aspect of diplomacy. Aliens were taking notes on Jake's seduction through entertainment analysis, Riley's aggressive networking through system infiltration, Diana's tactical linguistics, and Marcus's combat-ready social dining. Chancellor Vorp found himself with a request list from 17 different species who wanted to learn Earth-style diplomatic techniques. Ambassador Cleth was practically vibrating with excitement as they sent their first report back to the Council homeworld. Human diplomatic methods exceeded all expectations. They've weaponized politeness, militarized social interaction, and turned cultural exchange into strategic advantage. Recommend immediate adoption of human techniques across all diplomatic corps. What none of the aliens realized was that they were learning to be diplomats from a team of people whose previous job had been breaking things and eliminating problems. What the humans didn't realize was that they were accidentally teaching the entire galaxy to approach peaceful negotiations like military operations. And what everyone was about to discover was that this was somehow working better than traditional diplomacy ever had. The moment of truth came when Riley, having successfully defensive hacked herself into every system on the station, finally processed what she was actually seeing in the alien databases. She sat in stunned silence for exactly 17 seconds before her training kicked in and she activated the team's emergency communication channel. "Code yellow," she whispered into her comm. "I repeat, code yellow." Code yellow meant mission parameters have fundamentally changed and we need an immediate tactical reassessment. It was the kind of code that made experienced operatives stop whatever they were doing and pay attention. Within minutes, the team had assembled in Jake's quarters, which Riley had naturally swept for surveillance devices and found exactly zero because the aliens really were just trying to be hospitable. "Okay," Riley said, pulling up her findings on a secured tablet. "Remember how we thought they were studying human entertainment to understand our weaknesses for some kind of psychological warfare operation?" "Right," Jake nodded. "Standard intelligence gathering disguised as cultural interest." "Well, they are studying us for psychological purposes," Riley continued, "but not for warfare. They genuinely think our TV shows are documentaries about advanced conflict resolution techniques." Marcus looked confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean they've been broadcasting the office to the Rigelian Corporate Collective as a training manual for workplace efficiency. The Zorthan Military Academy is using Friends to teach their officers about small unit cohesion. And there's an entire species that restructured their government, based on parks and recreation." Diana raised an eyebrow. "They think our sitcoms are instructional videos. Not just sitcoms. Everything. They've got a thesis paper written by some alien anthropologist titled Human Conflict Resolution Through Romantic Comedy, a study in advanced social engineering. Apparently. Hence, they think When Harry Met Sally is a masterclass in long-term strategic relationship building." Jake sat down heavily. "So when they invited us here, they legitimately wanted to be friends and trade entertainment content," Riley confirmed. "The most elaborate trap they've set is trying to get us to stay for their weekly human entertainment appreciation night, where they watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine and discuss advanced law enforcement techniques." The team sat in silence, processing the fact that they'd spent 2 days treating friendly alien diplomats like hostile intelligence operatives. "So," Marcus said slowly, when Ambassador Cleth kept asking about our sophisticated social warfare tactics. "They were asking for tips on how to be better friends with people," Riley finished. Diana looked thoughtful. "And when they kept complimenting our revolutionary diplomatic methods, they were genuinely impressed that we were treating a peaceful trade negotiation like a military operation," Jake realized. There was another moment of silence as the implications sank in. "We have a problem," Jake announced. "Either we tell them the truth and explain that we're not actually diplomats, which might cause an interstellar incident, or we commit to the bit," Diana finished, "and somehow convince the galaxy that Earth's diplomatic philosophy is based on aggressive friendship and tactical politeness." Riley looked up from her tablet with an expression of someone who'd just realized they were standing at a crossroads of galactic history. "Actually, guys, I don't think we need to convince them of anything. Look at this." She pulled up a series of reports from across the station. "Council efficiency is up 30% since we arrived. 3 different species have resolved long-standing disputes by adopting our direct confrontation, followed by emotional vulnerability approach. And Security Chief Zara has implemented Marcus's defensive dining protocols in the offices, which has somehow improved morale." Marcus blinked. "My what now?" "Your tactical approach to buffet management. Apparently it's revolutionized how they think about shared resources." Jake straightened his tie, a gesture that had become so automatic he didn't realize he was doing it. "So what you're saying is—" "What I'm saying is that maybe our approach actually works," Riley said. "Maybe treating diplomacy like a military operation with politeness rules actually makes it more effective." Before anyone could respond, their door chimed. Ambassador Cleth's voice came through the intercom, practically vibrating with excitement. "Human diplomatic team. Wonderful news. The Council has voted unanimously to request that Earth establish a permanent diplomatic training academy. Chancellor Vorp wants to know if you'd be willing to stay and teach our methods to representatives from across the galaxy." The 4 humans looked at each other. And, Cleth continued, We've had 17 different species request mediation services using your aggressive courtesy techniques. There's even talk of a galaxy-wide reality show called Extreme Diplomacy featuring human negotiation methods. Jake cleared his throat. Ambassador Cleth, we need to discuss something with the Council. Could you arrange a full assembly? Of course. How wonderfully dramatic. Should we prepare for one of your famous tactical revelation presentations? After Cleth's excited footsteps faded down the corridor, Jake looked at his team. Jake, new mission parameters, he announced. We're going to tell them the truth. The whole truth? Diana asked. Jake grinned. Well, a version of the truth that they'll understand and appreciate. He straightened his tie one more time. We're going to explain that our methods work because Earth's diplomatic philosophy is based on the principle that every negotiation is potentially life or death. So we treat every interaction with the seriousness and preparation it deserves. Riley started laughing. You're going to tell them that human diplomacy is successful because we're paranoid and over-prepared. I'm going to tell them that human diplomacy is successful because we believe in aggressive friendship, tactical honesty, and the strategic application of sincerity, Jake corrected. Marcus nodded slowly. And that's actually not entirely untrue. Diana smiled, the first genuinely relaxed smile any of them had seen from her since arriving. You know what? I think I could teach tactical linguistics to alien diplomats. It might be the most honest work I've ever done. As they prepared for what would either be the most successful diplomatic presentation in human history or the most embarrassing confession ever recorded, none of them realized they were about to accidentally revolutionize galactic relations forever. 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood in what used to be a simple conference room and was now officially designated as the Human Diplomatic Strategy Center, watching a Zorthan military attaché practice his aggressive handshake technique on a very patient crystalline being from the Prism Collective. Remember, Jake coached firm grip, direct eye contact, all 7 of them in your case, and always assume they're as nervous as you are, which means you should project confidence through controlled intimidation. Like this. The Zorthan squeezed the crystal being's appendage with what he clearly thought was diplomatic pressure. Perfect, Jake confirmed, making notes on his tablet. That's exactly the kind of respectful assertiveness that shows you take the negotiation seriously. Across the room, Diana was conducting what the course catalog called Advanced Tactical Linguistics, which essentially involved teaching aliens to swear creatively in 17 different languages. Now, the beauty of human profanity, she explained to a class of fascinated diplomats, is that it can be used to express everything from mild frustration to genuine respect, depending on context and delivery. For example, calling someone a magnificent bastard during trade negotiations can actually strengthen the relationship. A furry delegate raised their paw. And son of a bitch. That depends entirely on whether their species considers canine ancestry an insult or a compliment, Diana replied seriously. Always research cultural context before deploying tactical profanity. Meanwhile, Marcus had somehow become the galaxy's most sought-after expert on combat etiquette, which was apparently what everyone was calling his approach to formal dining. The key principle, he explained to a room full of beings taking detailed notes, is that sharing a meal is the most vulnerable position 2 negotiating parties can place themselves in. You're consuming unknown substances, you can't immediately access weapons, and you're engaged in an activity that requires trust. Therefore, proper defensive dining acknowledges these vulnerabilities while demonstrating your commitment to the negotiation process. An 8-armed delegate from the Octarine Syndicate raised multiple appendages. But what if the food is genuinely delicious and non-threatening? Marcus nodded gravely. That's when it's most dangerous. Pleasure lowers your guard. Always compliment the food that's basic courtesy but maintain awareness of exit strategies and potential allergens. The real success story, though, was Riley, who had somehow parlayed her paranoid hacking skills into running the aggressive networking protocols program. The fundamental principle of human information security, she explained to a class of its specialists from across the galaxy, is that everyone is trying to hack everyone else. So we might as well be honest about it and build systems that assume hostile access attempts. But what if they're not trying to hack us? asked a confused technician. Then they're probably planning to. Riley replied confidently, so you're still better off being prepared. We call it defensive transparency. Assume everyone wants your information, so design systems that are secure but accessible to authorized users through properly validated aggressive authentication. The real test of Earth's new diplomatic methodology came when the Council received a request for mediation from two species that had been at war for over 3 centuries. The hegemony of sharp things and the alliance of soft voices had been locked in a conflict that had started over a trade dispute and had escalated into a matter of cultural identity. Inondo. Why? Won. Crane. They specifically requested human mediators, Chancellor Vorp explained to Jake, his eye stalk swiveling with what might have been amusement. Apparently they've heard about our violent handshakes and weaponized small talk and think it might be exactly what they need. Jake straightened his tie, a gesture that had become so associated with human diplomatic preparation that several species had begun incorporating similar motions into their own pre-negotiation rituals. What's the situation? The sharp things believe that all proper communication should involve some degree of physical risk. Vorp continued, while the soft voices maintain that true understanding can only come through gentle, non-threatening discourse. They've been fighting about how to communicate for so long that they've forgotten what they were originally arguing about. Perfect, Diana said, appearing beside them with a stack of translation protocols. That's exactly the kind of fundamentally stupid conflict humans excel at resolving. The mediation took place in a specially constructed neutral chamber that accommodated both species' communication preferences. The Sharp Things delegation entered through a maze of blade-lined corridors, while the Soft Voices representatives arrived via a pathway of cushioned tubes that played soothing melodies. Jake opened the proceedings by doing something that had become standard in human-mediated negotiations. He acknowledged the elephant in the room. Before we begin, he announced to both delegations, I want to acknowledge that you've been fighting for 300 years about something that neither of you can remember, and that's completely normal. Humans do this constantly. We have a saying, the most bitter feuds are fought over the smallest stakes. The Sharp Things leader, a being that resembled an aggressive pincushion, bristled appropriately. Our communication methods are a matter of cultural integrity, and our approach represents the pinnacle of civilized discourse, countered the Soft Voices representative, who appeared to be made entirely of flower petals and good intentions. Right, Jake nodded. And you're both correct, which is why we're going to solve this the human way, by making everyone equally uncomfortable. He gestured to Marcus, who wheeled in a cart laden with what appeared to be dining implements designed by someone with a profound misunderstanding of both cutlery and safety regulations. Lunch, Marcus announced cheerfully, will be served on sharp plates with soft utensils, while discussing mildly controversial topics in voices that are neither aggressive nor gentle, but simply conversational. Diana added, we've prepared a menu of foods that require both careful handling and trust to consume properly. Think of it as edible diplomacy. The negotiations that followed became legendary in diplomatic circles. The Sharp Things discovered that they could express their aggressive communication style through enthusiastic food appreciation, while the Soft Voices found that gentle guidance was essential when everyone was trying to eat soup with what were essentially small, flexible swords. Riley's contribution was setting up a communication network that required both delegations to access shared information using protocols that assumed everyone was simultaneously trying to help and hinder each other. The result was a system that was both secure and collaborative, a perfect metaphor for their new relationship. By the end of the week, the Sharp Things and Soft Voices had not only resolved their original trade dispute, which turned out to be about the proper way to package delicate crystals. The Sharp Things wanted protective spikes, the Soft Voices preferred cushioning, but had also established a joint cultural exchange program called Constructive Discourse through Mutually Assured Discomfort. It's beautiful, Chancellor Vorp observed, watching the two formerly warring delegations attempt to play a card game that Jake had described as competitive cooperation. They're bonding over their shared confusion about human logic. That's the secret, Jake explained, watching a sharp thing carefully help a soft voice navigate the spike-lined refreshment table. Humans are so consistently inconsistent that trying to understand us forces everyone else to develop empathy. We're like diplomatic training wheels for the rest of the galaxy. 3 months later, Earth received its first formal application from another species requesting to join the human method diplomatic training program. Then another. Then 17 more in the space of a week. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. Humanity had accidentally become the galaxy's premier diplomatic power by being aggressively honest about being diplomatically incompetent. You realize, Diana said, reviewing the latest batch of applications in their newly expanded office complex, we've basically turned our social dysfunction into an export industry. And our anxiety into a teaching methodology, Marcus added, consulting his calendar, which was now booked solid with defensive dining workshops for the next 2 years. Don't forget about our paranoia becoming a cybersecurity philosophy. Riley chimed in from behind a wall of monitors displaying security protocols that 17 different species were now implementing. Jake leaned back in his chair and looked out the window at the spaceport, where beings from across the galaxy were arriving daily to learn the human way of doing things. Ships from the Crystalline Confederacy, the Methane Monarchy, the Democratic Republic of Very Angry Trees, and dozens of other civilizations all queued up for landing clearance. You know what the weirdest part is? He said finally. That we're actually good at this? Diana suggested. No, Jake replied, watching a group of students from their aggressive handshaking seminar enthusiastically greeting each other in the plaza below. The weirdest part is that I think we always were. We just needed to find a galaxy full of beings who were even more neurotic than we are. Outside, the Galactic Council was voting to officially recognize Earth as the galaxy's center for diplomatic innovation through constructive anxiety, a title that came with substantial funding and the responsibility to train mediators for conflicts across known space. Inside, 4 humans who had stumbled into galactic politics through a series of misunderstandings were planning their next workshop, Advanced Emotional Transparency, how to successfully fail at hiding your feelings. The universe, it turned out, had been waiting for someone to teach it how to be properly, productively, enthusiastically neurotic. And humanity, as always, was more than happy to oblige.